Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So it being 6:03 by my clock, I'm going to call the meeting of the ERCA Board of Directors to order. First and foremost, I'd like to begin this evening by expressing my deepest sadness on behalf of the board and the staff here at the Conservation Authority, having learned of the passing of our good friend, Councillor John Jacobson, fellow board member. A member of our board since 2015, John's contributions were significant. He posed thoughtful questions and was a staunch advocate for his community. We extend our sincerest condolences on behalf of our entire board to John's wife, Donna, his family, his council colleagues, and his many friends. He will be missed. And I would ask at this time for a moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. Having already called the meeting to order, I don't think we have regrets. I think everyone is here, but I will go through the roll call. When I call your name, just please unmute and indicate you're present. Councillor Peter Courtney?
Present.
Ms. Marilyn Morrison?
Present.
Councillor Morley Bowman?
Present.
Councillor Chris Vanderdolen?
Present.
Councillor Laura Lucier?
Present.
Councillor Larry Patterson?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Tracy Bailey?
Present.
Councillor Len Janice?
Present.
Councillor Mark Carrick?
Present.
Councillor Sue DeJarla?
Present.
Councillor Dane Malik?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Joe Bichetti?
Present.
Councillor Tanya Jobin?
Present.
Councillor Jim Morrison?
Present.
And Councillor Ed Sleeman?
Present.
Thank you, everyone.
And worthy chair, I'm here also.
You offered regrets initially. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
Yeah, I didn't know how my week was going to turn out. Thanks.
Understood. Well, understood. We're happy you're here. Thank you. So having said that, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America, who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Board members, please raise your hand to indicate if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'm looking now for a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Deputy Mayor Joe Bichetti, seconded by Councillor Bowman. Any opposed? Thank you. Seeing none. Okay, the hearing board. So now I need a motion for us to move into the hearing board. We have one item, I believe, on this agenda. Councillor Jobin, seconded by, looking for a hand, Councillor Janice. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. We are now going to conduct hearings under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act in respect of one application. Bridget Jones is requesting relief from access, ingress, and egress policy requirements to construct a detached structure at 9806 Street, St. Clair Road in the town of Lakeshore. We, as the hearing board, are unaware of the matters being brought forward. We are only now receiving and reviewing the information provided by staff this evening. The authority has adopted regulations under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which requires the permission of the authority for the development within an area regulated by the authority in order to ensure no adverse effects on the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches, or pollution or conservation of land, or to permit alteration to a shoreline or water course or interference with a wetland. The staff has reviewed this proposed works, and a copy of the staff report has been given to the applicant. The Conservation Authorities Act, Section 2812, provides that permission required under a regulation may be under Clause 1B or 8, shall not be refused or granted subject to conditions unless the person requesting permission has been given the opportunity to require a hearing before the authority, or if the authority so directs, before the authority's executive committee. In holding these hearings, the authority board is to determine whether or not a permit is to be issued. In doing so, we can only consider the application in the form that is before us. The staff report, such evidence as may be given, and the submissions to be made on behalf of each applicant. The proceedings will be conducted according to the Statutory Powers Procedure Act under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act. A witness may refuse to answer any question on the ground that the answer may tend to incriminate the person, or may tend to establish his/her liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or of any person. The procedure in general shall be informal. However, this quasi-judicial process and provides for evidence to be given in response to members' question. Therefore, staff and applicants will be asked to swear an oath or provide an affirmation to speak the truth. In accordance with Section 28 of the Act, an applicant who has been refused permission or who objects to conditions imposed on a permission may, within 30 days of receiving the reasons, appeal in writing to the minister who may refuse the permission or grant permission with or without conditions. Through order in council, the responsibility for the hearing the appeal has been transferred to the Mining and Lands Tribunal. If the applicant has any questions to ask of the hearing board or of the authority representative, they must be directed to the chair of the board. The staff will introduce the applicant, his or her owner, and others wishing to speak, and then present the staff position. The applicant and or their agent may then speak and make any comments on the staff position if they so desire. I would also remind everyone that the hearing board is open to the public, and therefore we will allow others to speak and, if necessary, the applicant in rebuttal. We, as the hearing board, will question, if necessary, both the staff and the applicant/agent. Before I ask Dan Jenner, Regulations Coordinator, to introduce the application, I would ask that he swear an oath or provide an affirmation to speak the truth. Dan, which way do you want to go there?
Affirmation, please.
Okay, Mr. Jenner, do you solemnly affirm that the evidence which you are about to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
I do.
Thank you, Dan. Please proceed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members. Tonight, we are here to consider the application for permit submitted by Bridget Jones and Merv Wismer at 9806 St. Clair Road in the town of Lakeshore. The application has been submitted for the construction of a detached structure with a floor area of approximately 863 square feet, which is essentially a 2.5-car garage. The structure is intended to be for the storage of watercraft, some household items such as Christmas lights, outdoor decorations, things of that nature. There is an existing small detached structure and a primary full-time residence already existing on the property. The application is before the committee tonight to seek relief from the ERCA access requirements, which state that the maximum depth of water over the roadway during a 1 in 100 year flood event is not to exceed 0.3 meters or 12 inches of water. There is an existing ERCA policy that directs staff that detached structures under 64 square meters, which is 688 square feet, do not need to satisfy this typical ERCA access policy, provided that they are non-habitable and associated with an existing residence. This structure is only slightly over that threshold, which is why we are seeking relief tonight. The proposed structure will be meeting all of the current regulatory standards, such as the floodproofing elevation and setbacks from the lake. Ice at this location is not a concern. This structure will be located on the roadside of both the existing residence and the existing detached structure. Based on the type of structure, the existing grade elevations, and the site layout, side yard drainage is not a major concern for this particular structure. The minimum required road elevations to satisfy the ERCA policy is 176.3 meters above sea level, and the minimum for typical provincial policy is 176.1 meters above sea level. The existing road elevations leading up to this site are 13 inches below the ERCA minimum and only 6 inches below the provincial minimum. This two small sections of road are below the provincial minimum by 6 inches, and the rest is above the provincial minimum. However, it is below ERCA. Portions of St. Clair Road east of Clairview Ave, particularly the two areas that are below the typical provincial numbers, have been recently delineated by the town of Lakeshore so that the road is identifiable during a flood event to both property owners and people living in this area, as well as emergency first responders who are fully aware of the low-lying nature of this property. For those reasons, ERCA staff are recommending to the board that the application be approved. And I would like to reiterate that this is a non-habitable detached structure associated with an existing residential home, and it will not be introducing new families or additional people to this area. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you are still muted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Ms. Jones, is she present, by the way? Mr. Jenner, are you aware?
I believe she is, yes.
Ms. Jones, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm good with everything that Dan has presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Jenner? Okay, seeing none, just looking for a motion. We do have the administration recommendation, Councillor Patterson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bailey. Is anyone opposed to, and I assume Councillor Patterson, you're moving the recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. That was understood, obviously, Deputy Mayor Bailey. Yes, yeah, okay, thank you. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Now I need a motion, and thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Need a motion now to move back into the regular board meeting. Councillor Vanderdolen, Deputy Mayor Verbeke. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Okay, so now looking for a motion to adopt the minutes of our October 8th meeting. Councillor Sleeman moved the minutes, seconded by Councillor Lucier. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Now there are also the minutes for the October 7th Executive Committee meeting. Any questions there? Direction, please. Motion to receive. Councillor Carrick, seconded by Councillor Jobin. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Business arriving, we have nothing under item 7. A few announcements under item 8. There have been a significant number of construction projects taking place, or there are a significant number of construction projects taking place right now, including rapid progress on the John R. Park Homestead Heritage Center, resurfacing parking facilities at Holiday Beach to make them more accessible, and significant Peche Island habitat restoration taking place in partnership with the City of Windsor. Rapid progress is also taking place on the Essex County Regional Energy Plan. Presentations have been made to several municipal councils following the presentation to County Council, and engagement with members of municipal administration continues. The plan is on target for completion in March 2021. We're pleased to announce, we're pleased to host our first physically distanced COVID compliant tree planting event on October 24th, when we welcome 75 Rotarians, including Councillor Lucier and newly elected Councillor G1 Gill, who will incidentally be joining this board, likely for our next December meeting. We'll have the opportunity to welcome him, our December meeting, we'll have the opportunity to welcome him then. And in that project, there was 300 trees planted in the Rotary Legacy Forest. This past week, thanks to a grant from the TD Friends of the Environment Foundation, we were also able to undertake a planting of more than 100 trees on lands owned by Caldwell First Nations. Finally, as members have seen, amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act were included in part of the 2020 Ontario budget on November 5th. A report on those on these amendments will be presented this evening. If there's any questions on any of that, I don't know. Nicole, do I need a motion to receive on this? You're muted, sorry.
Muted, Nicole.
Apologies. No, that was just announcements for the meeting.
Thank you. Okay. No delegations or presentations. Reports for approval. The BD 34 2020 capital project update. Mr. Money, I believe you're on.
Thank you, Chairman. We decided to provide a brief overview of the capital projects that you've already spoken to a little bit today. So there's a number of capital projects that the Conservation Authorities is either wrapping up or midway through. The vast majority of those projects are either on or under budget. The one project that we do need to highlight as something that is over budget is our John R. Park Homestead heritage structure. That project is well underway. The project itself was approved by the executive committee, approximately $100,000 over budget. And since then, we've accumulated another $50,000 in additional unanticipated costs, which amounts to about a 5% increase. Since then, we've also received word that due to escalating costs of things like lumber, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and various other things, that our contractor has already put us on notice that there may be some additional costs. So we're anticipating a total build of 1.4 million instead of the original budget of 1.2 plus the additional 100 that the executive committee approved as the lowest bid tender. So the recommendation is there before you. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Money. Board members, any questions on this report? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin, you explained it. I figured lumber and the such was one of the reasons, but $200,000 is pretty substantial for an overture. I guess when it's tendered out, are there provisions in there obviously allowing for us to, or the contractor to seek more funds for the project, or, you know, what's the varying degree and why is it another $200,000? Usually when you tender it out, you tell them specifically what we need and they have to comply with that. So is it just the lumber that they're asking for more money on, or what are the other things?
Yeah, through you, Chairman, we worked extensively with the architect to bring the cost down already, and the builder is actually being quite compliant in terms of trying to reduce costs further and bring cost-saving measures to the table because they understand that this is over budget. But ultimately, the lowest bid that was received by the executive committee was 1.2 approximately. So the overall scope of the budget increased when the bids were received. Both the Conservation Authority Administration as well as the foundation are both seeking additional funds. We have a number of grant applications that are outstanding right now. And the foundation is diligently working towards raising a lot of additional funds towards this project. There are a lot of irons in the fire, absolutely. And the goal here is to close this gap and make it much smaller, if not zero.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Deputy Mayor Verbeke? And
Well, thank you, with the chair. So, what's stopping coming back in February saying they need more money? And what can we do? We can't say we can put it on hold because, they've got us. So, is there anything we can do to kind of max this out or something? Because I could see this going up for another 100 or 200 probably before it's completed.
Through you, Chairman. Generally speaking, we don't anticipate any further costs. We actually put in a contingency to bring it up to 1.4. We do believe the budget will fall in and around that.
Mr. Burney, you wanted to add something?
No, Kevin is correct in his response. In addition, we're tightening up some administrative controls with the architect as well, as far as like the day-to-day operation of the site and any perceived expenditures. And they are dealing very closely with Kevin, advising them of where we're at in construction and what we're going to be looking at. So Kevin's response was 100% correct.
Thank you, Mr. Burney. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. My colleague asked the question about extra funding, and I'm wondering, are we sitting on track for the March completion? Where are we with that, Kevin, please?
Through you, Chairman. Right now, the building is scheduled to be completed mid-January to end January as a completion date. Part of the requirements associated with our grant with FedDev Ontario was that we have it all done by the end of March.
So we're pretty much on track for that, for the interior, for everything that has to be finished off?
Yeah, through you. Yeah, we absolutely are. Right now, they actually are working on the second floor of the structure and putting up the trusses. I would anticipate them having starting on the roof probably within the next week or two.
Okay.
They'll have it fully enclosed soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, board members? Okay, looking for direction. We do have the recommendation in the report. Councillor Desjardins, move the recommendation. Thank you. Councillor Sleeman, seconded. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Money. BD 3520, Watershed Management Services, Staffing, Service Delivery Capacity, and Legislated Response Times. Mr. Burney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to acknowledge I worked very closely with Shelley on this, and her help and assistance with some of the statistical analysis and then gathering that additional information from our colleagues at other conservation authorities. It was immeasurable to get this report through in on time. Nicole also assisted with some of the calls to some of our friends and got some HR information in a timely fashion. We've been looking at steadily increasing numbers, not so much in plan review, but in applications for permit, and applications for permit have been responding to the elevated lake levels that we've now been over 6 years observing. Storm events, especially out of the northeast and southeast, have bore in on our region, and significant damage was sustained by just about every municipality within the region, and both on private properties and public properties. And our staff has been responding, assisting with securing those approvals and getting those approvals through in as timely a fashion as possible. This year, though, with the event of COVID and working remotely, those challenges have further exacerbated, staff capacity. We went through and in responding to member Janice's inquiry and in responding to the resolution on that, we did a bit of a comparative analysis between increasing numbers of permits over time, and then we have to try and relate it back to something else as a comparator. So the comparator within the province is basically our colleagues who are in other identified growth areas. Those other identified growth areas, they have much more in staffing largesse than we are blessed with. But we had to look and analyze those numbers. So the first few charts that we come up with and we look at, first and foremost, is total permits and plan review numbers. The steady increase since 2015. And even before 2015, historically with the authority, there has been an observation of increased development activity on our fringe areas of our hazards and on our nearshore areas. People want to be around water. People want to be around and enjoy that as a natural resource. And the numbers we've always seen those numbers inching up. Historically, we've assessed those requirements and then responded accordingly. But over the last several years, with budget constraints, funding constraints, and others, we've not kept pace. So the first chart again shows the steady increase up until 2020. The next is again another review comparing our plan review submissions. Our plan review submissions are operational instruments that are circulated under regulation by to the Conservation Authority by all member municipalities for our review and comment. Fairly consistent in and around the 700 to 800 number, but it ebbs and flows and it changes during the course of the year, depending upon development activities, depending upon the economy. A very good economy, operational planning, consents, minor variances, and some of those other things tends to fall off a little bit, and the new developments pick up. Tougher economy, then there's, more people want to fix up, renovate, and do other things and do small additions. So that kind of varies. But since 2015 to 2020, steadily increasing numbers of permits, and forecast is for that trend to increase through the next couple of years due to the impacts of our nearshore areas responding to 6 years of elevated lake levels. And those elevated lake levels also impact and affect our riverine systems. As the riverine systems move up till you finally get in elevation high enough where you no longer have lake effect or lake impact flooding. Lake levels drop, river levels drop, break walls will collapse because the water is there no longer to assist in supporting hydrostatic pressures from the land pushing out against the break wall. The next chart that you come to is again the comparison for our fee for service related revenues. As you compare, your applicants coming to the municipality pay a plan review fee. That fee is circulated to the Conservation Authority, and you can see the most significant increase in fee revenue comes from, again, those numbers associated with permits. The steady, increase in numbers, though, in numbers of circulation of instruments, plan review, and permits, we've not kept pace with staff required to receive the information, respond to the information, set up pre-consultation and discussion with some of the information, meet with our municipal colleagues, undertake, unfortunately, compliance with our permitting role and our permitting responsibilities, because unfortunately, if you're going to issue a permit, then you have to ensure that there's compliance with permit. The hearing committee tonight dealt with a matter in front of the committee. Following up that committee's decision, our staff will reattend the site and confirm that indeed compliance with what's been approved by our hearing committee and what's been approved by the board for the overall permit, that those out in the field meet those standards. Now, we've been looking at and managing for several years now turnaround times. And there's mandated turnaround times that Conservation Ontario has negotiated with the province. There's something that's called the Untitled Chapter, which is the Conservation Authority Liaison Committee that met with the province to come up with acceptable turnaround times based on whether it's a minor application, or a major application. And those terms are a little bit nebulous, but depending upon the scope of the work being put forward, whether it's a fully engineered type of an application, or whether it's simply an application for grading a fill or a small construction, you know, the minor major category, they will fit within that. But typically on the minors, we're allowed 14 days to respond to a completed application, and then 21 days to issue the permit. Now, turnaround times are a great administrative tool to be able to say to people, well, I'm within my turnaround times. People in the field don't give a care about how much time we are allowed as bureaucrats to issue a permit. Somebody who submits appropriate documentation want a response as quickly as possible. We've had the pleasure, and I've had the pleasure personally to meet with several of you with your ratepayers on different sites on things. And, the interesting thing about turnaround times, the moment many applicants first think about something, that's the start of their clock. The start of our clock, though, doesn't happen until after that application is directed to us by our municipal member municipalities. And it may have been a week or a little bit more in a municipality. When it gets to us, then that time we're not forgiven for. We already inherit, and applicants think that's part of what we should have already been dealing with. But anyways, those days are what those days are. And in responding on that, in 2016, a minor development, approximately, there was about 9% that we were over. And on major development, we were around 20% over. But in 2020, minor development, we were 25% over the accepted and the prescribed turnaround times from the province. And on major development, 35% over. And when you start having that additional time in that, that's when investors start to get nervous, and private property owners become angry and start either knocking on your door or ringing your telephones. And we need to be able to provide that response professionally and expeditiously. And with appropriately trained personnel involved in it, we can meet those turnaround times, but we have to have the numbers available to us to do that. Again, the next couple of charts that we looked at, we went out to Conservation Ontario, and then through Nicole and Shelley and myself, we contacted our colleagues at other conservation authorities that are identified as growth areas. And these are conservation area authorities who have similar numbers to us. Some are a lot larger in their capital budgets, and their operational budgets are significantly larger. Some have some fee-for-service work that is different than ours. But the comparators that we looked at and required from them was staff who are engaged in operational plan review and Section 28 permit review. So we called out any other additional staff from those other CAs and used those actual staff from comparators. We are number 2 in the province with respect to development activities within our hazard lands. And that's great for an economic kind of forecast, and that's great for development, but it's unfortunate and challenging in that some people are wishing sometimes to put themselves in exposure to hazards. It's your staff's role here to ensure that they are adequately protected so they don't become a burden on the municipality and put themselves in potential harm's way. And there's challenges associated with that. And again, our staff reports to you those numbers. Those ones that fall outside of the accepted guidelines, those are the ones that come in front of you, in front of our hearing committee. And that's what the hearing committee meets on. So again, those comparators show the first chart there, the conservation authorities, their actual numbers, where we are at in comparison with them. The next chart then shows the comparison of where we are at with staff as compared to them who are doing like for like work with those CAs. And then we have our recommendation, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions they may not have already addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Burney. This is an excellent report. I'll open up the floor to questions from committee members or board members, excuse me. Ms. Morrison, followed by Deputy Mayor Verbeke.
Thank you, Chair. After reading that, I realize that we are very, very thin here compared to especially the conservation authorities in the GTA. And I do recognize that you do need more in order to get through these files. My question is, with the new Conservation Act changes potentially coming down the pipe, how is that going to affect our responsibilities with regards to having more staff? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at, Tim or Mr. Burney?
For you, Mr. Chair, Member Morrison, yes, I do. Specifically, yes. The changes that are being put forward in the CA Act relate to enforcement tools that were requested to enhance gaining compliance. Your staff's responsibilities here at the Essex Region Conservation Authority do not change with the amendments put forward by the Parliament with the Conservation Authorities Act. Some of the requested additional compliance tools that were initially shown in the original act that received approval considering further regulation, those have been removed by the omnibus bill. Our existing processes that we are fully compliant with will still be the tools that we use to deal with these approvals. Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act is core mandate work, and we need to satisfy that core mandate with appropriate staffing to respond to meet those current and existing provincially approved timelines.
So then the province is not taking away any of our, I don't want to say powers, but any of our opportunities to protect. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing with respect to our roles and responsibilities through the province. We still have the delegated authorities subject to a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to be both a commenting agency and an approval agency for development within hazard lands. None of that has been changed. Through involvement previously with the province and through Conservation Ontario, though, we were attempting to secure additional compliance tools, such as stop work orders and other instruments, to assist with gaining compliance without having to use, I use the term archaic means, which means historically those provisions that we've always been utilizing, none of those provisions have been changed. It was the requested additional compliance tools that the province has seen fit to not award, and those were clawed back on the recent amendments. And but everything else with respect to identification of hazards, the extent of hazards, the tests that your staff here have to meet in reviewing and approving a development proposal have to still be met.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. I have Deputy Mayor Verbeke, followed by Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, worthy chair. And I guess through you, Tim, it's kind of early to say, but let's, you're probably going to put the application out for recruitment of these two people, and two here, two there. You know, we are lean, so I can just imagine what the, you know, we're going to be budgeting here for. So these positions won't start until 2021.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is the plan. These positions and the personnel who occupy these positions require several things. First and foremost, some level of experience. And the technical training is not something that is specifically offered directly through universities or colleges. And you will see from our current staff complement and what have you, we have a mixed bag of people trained in various fields. First and foremost, there is a requirement to have an understanding of basic construction and construction procedures. There's an element of engineering analysis that's required, and then a fulsome understanding of planning process to be able to look at these technical submissions, understand how it fits within municipally approved planning designations and zones, and then to ensure technically that it complies with appropriate minimum standards and also complies with current court instructions, as the most recent challenge to the Gilmore decision is forcing us to comply with.
Okay, thank you. I would have taken yes for an answer too, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Verbeke. Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just some comments. Understanding we just went through an exercise at Toronto where ERCA has some vulnerabilities. There's a lot of money that needs to be pumped into ERCA if we need to bring things up to speed. So where does this fit on the priority list of what we have to move as we move forward? Where does this fit? Because we're going to need more money. But I'm thinking we should be looking at maybe a 5-year plan and taking prioritizing, and every year we add something till we can build it up, so we can't do it all at once. We know we can't. But where would this be on that priority list of something we need to hire before we hire something else that we think we need down the road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may. Much of this service and much of this work is fee-for-service work. And we are also looking at, and that's why the comparator is shown with respect to numbers of staff required to provide timely responses to applications that we are paid a permit fee for. Our current model with respect to fee-for-service, we are in the low 70% for getting full cost recovery or hitting full cost recovery with respect to that. So our fees that we are taking in for the service pays for the staff involved in the service. Obviously, at the start of the year, we have to have budget money to kick these things into gear to support the staff that are required to deliver this service. This is a critical core mandated service. This department was not touched by the incident or the matter that this board had to respond to earlier. And again, the province with the update of the Conservation Authorities Act has identified that this is core mandate work that is required to be done and is required to be met.
Okay. So you're saying we basically need float money, and the permits and that stuff will offset the cost of these staff. And if it doesn't quite make it, we still will have to compensate some of that, is what basically is what's going to have to happen, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Burney, I appreciate you bringing this forward. This has been an area of concern. I'll be starting my 7th year on ERCA very soon, with probably having many more years experience than I have. But that's one of the things I've noticed over those past years is that our manpower and running the department is lean as we are. I'm going to fully support this recommendation, and I hope upper management will take a look at other areas of ERCA that we need help in. I don't think until we've gone into your office prior to COVID to see what actually happens throughout the course of a day, how many fingers are in a pot, how many telephones are being worked on. And when we do get those phone calls from residents, they're not happy. And it's not lack of the staff can't do it. There's just not enough staff there. I've been there, I've witnessed it. So again, thank you, Mr. Burney, for bringing this forward. And I would like to move the recommendation when all the questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Janice.
Thank you. Yes, I asked for this report, and I don't know if it's lakeshore or just certain areas that seem to have issues. I know I can attest, Tim can attest, I called him last week that a permit was, I don't know, 5 days over, 10 days over, and the contractor's waiting ready to go, and we're holding up the whole project. And I think it's been addressed. So, and it's not the only one I've had to deal with. We're falling behind our times. No, Tim, we've lost some staff. We have lost staff. Is it 2 this year that we have lost?
Through you, Mr.
Sorry,
Chair,
Mr. Bernie.
Cynthia Casagrande, who was our regulations coordinator, I had the pleasure of working with her for 30 years. And when a person goes into retirement, unfortunately, she retired at almost the same date that COVID struck us. And people disappear in the dark of the COVID night. You don't replace the quality of an officer like Officer Casagrande simply. So losing her was a significant loss to the department, but through her mentorship with Dan and Ashley and Sydney and others right now, you know, we are evolving and attempting to respond. We lost another technical person a year or two ago to the town of Tecumseh. Member Jobin and Member Bacchetti stole a very good engineer that we had, but we've been very fortunate to get equally competent young man to replace that engineer. But you go through attrition with staff, and it's the unfortunate nature of the beast. But we have lost our planner. Leamington stole our planner, so we're now having to interview and replace our planner. But each one of those positions that you lose, especially if they spent some time with you, you lose some intellectual memory, and you lose, you know, people who are experienced and capable of moving things through more expeditiously. That's the nature of the beast. People come and go, and you've got to be able to respond, but you have to have that resiliency built into your staff complement. And that's some of the things that we are attempting to do, along with having still bare bones numbers to meet those requirements. Shelley and my, comparative analysis showed 15 people. When you start talking about that number of people, though, you have to suggest to yourself, that sounds just crazy. But when you start thinking the complexities of when you're working on one piece of paper, and remember Courtney and I had a situation where we had to go out to Amherstburg, extremely complicated. And it took more than one discipline in our office to come to terms with how we're going to deal with it. That takes time. At the same time, another call is coming in, or somebody wants pre-consultation, or a hearing is scheduled, or unfortunately, we have to proceed with legal action. It takes many hands to make light work. So we need to have that.
Just to follow up. Okay, and I guess the concerning part here is this board could go ahead and say, yes, we agree with you, you're overworked, or we're falling behind in regulations. But at the same time, as you know, these budgets go back to different municipalities. If there's pushback and you've already hired 2, or you got looking at 2 coming in the door, is that fair that these people think they may have a job coming up and all of a sudden the funding's not there because our member municipalities do not favor it? So I'm just wondering, we put these in the budget, but not go ahead right now, you know, because there's a process for interviewing. There's a cost to interview. That's, you know, I'm all in, but my fear is certainly I will push my council to support the budget and support the new positions. I certainly have been around too that know that we're definitely very light. So, but as other members have mentioned, I don't think a lot of people appreciate most of our recovery is through our permits and applications. Whereas Mr. Kirk was saying that we're going to have some other pressures at budget. So with all that folded in, you know, we may have let's just, for argument's sake, 2%, but 1% is recoverable. It's easier to sell than a full 2%. So I'm just wondering if we're going just a step too quick by actually passing this. I think we should pass it to send it to budget but I don't know if we should actually go ahead and do the hiring rate now before we know the answer from our member municipalities. Just my thought. I have no problem. I'm all in for it, but we have the cart before the horse on this one.
Through you, if I may, Mr. Chair, we have to react and respect the wishes of this board with respect to budgets and budgets that are being approved. We as an agency, though, have a responsibility under statute to respond to these submissions. So again, this is core mandated work, and if we're going to meet those provincially instructed timelines, the personnel have to be there to respond. And but as staff, we have to react and respect the wishes of this board with respect to budget coming forward. Our fee for service just about covers those costs, but the budget has to realistically identify those numbers of people in that from the start of every year to have those qualified individuals ready to go. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, but my recommendation on this report put forward is what I wish to proceed with from this board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vander Dolen, followed by Councillor Sleeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Burney. Yeah, I think it's obvious we need additional technical staff. From what I understand, the shortage of these technical people goes back at least a decade, if not longer, and this is not new. I just want to warn the board that I think there's a danger in keep telling ourselves over and over, oh, we're lean, we're light, we're this, we're that. We have plenty of people, but a lot of them are doing things that are non-core. Now, this is the core. This is what we exist to do. And I think it's terrible that we're up to 35% behind. And maybe we should be in addition to adding these staff, maybe we should be looking at maybe redeploying some of our people from non-core areas. You know, maybe the cooks and the landscapers and the laundry people should be down in the hull bailing right now to reduce that 35% recidivism rate or missing rate or however you want to describe it. But I think we really do have to fix that, because it's linked to so many other problems in our society, like the housing crisis and job shortage and investment shortage and the rest of it. I just think that's overarching. Is it possible to redeploy some people, even if it's just on a temporary basis, and then we can, when the 35% and the 25% gaps are closed, then we can move back to where we were, perhaps? Just a thought.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We are looking at, again, if we can fit certain technical staff into, those slots, if it can work. There is, at any given time, administrative support help that's required, and some existing staff that may not be in a position and may be facing the potential, in a worst case, for a layoff or something else. If we can fit them into that, we will certainly attempt to do so. But if there is not minimum technical capability there present, that simply doesn't work. And but we'll pursue all those options. We recently brought on one of our RMOs who was under contract. Her technical background, education allowed her to be fit into a regulations analyst position, but that created a bit of a shortage with respect to RMO. So two of our other existing compliance officers were also trained in the past to do some RMO work for source water protection. So we are swinging those in again to have economies of scale, because they are experienced. They can do some of those things quickly and more expeditiously. And so we're attempting to make that fit. So there's other parts of the puzzle too that we are connecting with respect to other responsibilities. And if staff can fit, we will certainly look to that. But again, the skill sets that are required are very specific for this core work.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sleeman.
Ed, you're muted.
Yes, we did. I unmuted myself, yeah. By the way, I think what Larry was saying, Larry Patterson, about the hiring of two people, I really fully agree with him. one of the things. And myself, I have been on ERCA 10, 11 years steady since I got elected. And I have a lot of complaints from people, from constituents, people from the city, people that I know. They were saying ERCA is very slow in responding to concern from the citizens, actually. And it's been on my mind for a long time. And we try to find efficiencies, but you can go so far. So personally, I think if we hire 2 people, it's going to relieve a lot of pressure on different departments. And I think our efficiency will go up regardless what department we have. So I'm going to support Larry's motion on hiring 2 people.
Thank you, Councillor. That's the last of the hands that I saw. Oh, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Tim, just quick couple questions. You referenced in the report the 2018 comparators and 1,842 permits total. Do you know offhand what the 2019 permits were for ERCA or no? Were you around the same? Were you over? Was it even more in 2019? And what are we tracking for in 2020? Sorry to throw you on the spot.
Thank you, Member Courtney. Through you, Mr. Chair. We are going to hit record numbers this year. We will top anything that we've observed previously. And there's no way to predict, because the moment you predict, those numbers, we're just going by monthly incremental, what have we done historically and how we've looked at that. And continuously this year, we fell short when we were looking at the comparators. Well, if we do this and we adjust for that, normally in September, we see this many. Well, we got 15 more. And it's like, oh my God. Then when you end up with now already ahead of what your prediction was, you're now behind that many more. So page 29 has those comparators that we are looking at. But again, these other comparators, to make sure we're looking at apples for apples and oranges for oranges, they are from the periods described and then cut off. And they were from the start of the year, and I believe it was up to September when we did those comparators. So we've been on a steadily increase. And if you look at the 1842 in the one chart, you go back to the other chart, and you can see for 2021 we're going to be 2,100 permits possibly. So we're still number 2 in the province. We've got to try harder, and then maybe we can beat Toronto. So.
And lastly, I was going to say, you kind of alluded to it, the monthly permits. I don't want to make assumptions, but usually building permits are heavy in the spring, summer, and late fall. Cement foundations. Is there any dead time or downtime for your staff, the technical staff that are doing these permits, to constitute the extra 2? Is it all year round? Busy, busy, busy? I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, 100%. It's 24/7, 365. It's not a. We will see ebbs and flows, slight during the month. And I've also reached out to, and I talked to all our building officials in the 9-member municipalities as far as like their observation, where we're at and what's going on. And again, their comments and their observations are much the same as what we are and what we are tracking here. The numbers are just absolutely crazy for people doing this work, but excellent from the perspective of, the economy. And first and foremost, people are migrating here. We are getting people moving from Toronto here. We're getting people moving from down east here because the cost of living is better, and may not have much there, but what they've got there, they'll sell for huge bucks, come and invest it here. So we want to have those open doors for that development coming here, and we have to be able to provide those services. So we see it constant through the year. Some ebbs and flows, February, March, and a little bit in November. But the funny thing is come December, I don't know, they start giving themselves Christmas presents and applying for building permits and our permits. And we always see just a rush of work just up to and before Christmas. And so we're trying to get ahead of that and manage that.
So again, core mandate, I get it. You and Dan, we did have a good site visit in Amherstburg. I've contacted you guys a couple times with frustrated residents slamming ERCA, you know, holding up the process. They're trying to get in their houses and move forward. So I will say it is a slippery slope. We are in a pandemic. I'm looking at operational costs in my municipality and what kind of concessions can be made there. But these are definitely positions that are needed. Also, it is kind of nice to have them brought forward for budget. I hate to do mid-year job hiring like Councillor Janice was alluding to, but I know how backlogged you guys are, and we've got legislation and we got to meet the timeline. So I will be supporting this because this is the one-off that's justified. And thank you for the well-written report. And the graphs are very true in the workload that you guys are doing. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, I want to acknowledge both Shelley's significant work on this report and Nicole's assistance with this report as well.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, the numbers have gone up about 75% since 2015. Was this, just to confirm, was the staffing level still the same then as it is today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we attempted again with assessing our fee for service and with board authorization, you know, we incrementally, you know, got another staffer here, another staffer there, but we didn't do unfortunately, we didn't undertake a cohesive analysis as we've done right now with the additional comparators thrown in to see where exactly we're at. And it's a tough thing sometimes. How do you do that kind of analysis? How many people do you need? Well, unless you actually look for others who are in this business and doing this work, there was no real basis for it. We were short-staffed previously. And I had complained to previous administrations, but again, business interests, development, we went through the 2008 recession, and we saw a little bit of a fall off, but almost immediately 2009 it picked right back up very quickly. And we unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to be flexible and bring on staff to try and meet that recovery. And then we got significantly behind 2009, 2010, and then we, you know, tried to scramble to keep up, but we didn't.
Right.
Sorry, Councillor, just on that, I hate to interrupt you, but Ms. McMullen does point out in the chat that on page 30, I believe, the staffing by direct staffing positions chart is on there. And there's a line that I highlighted, I think speaks directly to that question. Even with adding an additional technician this month, it is a modest 43% increase in staff versus a 75% increase in activity. So, you know, the delta is the points made there in the delta, I think. But please continue.
Right. And you know, in terms of the timing, you know, whether we move now or at budget time, I tend to think we do need to get going. What is the training period that you would need to have a fully productive technician in this role, Mr. Burney?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Depending on a person's experience, if we have a civil technologist or a comparable person, a person who's got some building code experience, they can almost fit immediately into the role to undertake the reviews and recommend authorization to approvals. If we can't find someone of solid experience and then having to do training, we're probably about 3 to 6 months getting someone up to be able to function with some hand-holding and some mentorship ongoing. So, you know, a green person, 3 to 6 months. Person with experience, a couple of months.
Right.
And I speculated that. So, and I'm just wondering, I'm trying to get, I'm new at this, in this board, but the two positions in terms of our overall budget, does anybody have an idea of what that represents in terms of an increase in our overall budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the impact on the budget would be based on the approved position. Both of these positions are identified in the BU as identified in the report. The regulations technician is identified. It was a vacated position that we didn't refill because of business purposes at that point in time and the focus at that point in time. And the regulations analyst is identified. But we're in the range of probably about $100,000.
Okay, but it's not that significant in an overall budget, though, is it? Or through you, Mr. Chair, to maybe Mr. Burney. In our overall salaries budget is 100,000. Is that very significant? I just don't have the numbers in front of me, so.
I may deflect that question to Shelley with respect to some financial input if Shelley can.
Ms. McMullen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Morrison, it would be approximately 3%, but that doesn't take into account that we may consider a fee increase or charging for some consultations to applicants, as well as, you know, looking at potential staffing reductions for non-mandatory services certainly is an option.
Thank you very much. And that was actually my final question, just referring to Mr. Vanderdolen's comments. Do we have any plans for any studies for non-mandated, non-essential services within ERCA? Do we have anything planned for that in the near future?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in the walk-in report prepared for the board, we acknowledge a review of the services that we have to provide, the province's instruction on what we are supposed to consider and how we're supposed to proceed. So that review of services, programs and program delivery is all going to be part of something that is going to be further discussing in an upcoming report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't have any other hands that I noticed went up and no messages in the chat. So I guess I'll move to Councillor Patterson. Direction, please.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Sleeman. I'll call the question. We had a lot of comments and questions all there. So anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burney. Councillor Patterson.
If I may, I wish to thank the board for this support of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will echo that those thanks. Okay, we have BD 3620 board meeting schedule. So attached to this report, board meeting schedule for 2021. Are there any questions, comments? If not, I'll just look for direction. Deputy Mayor Verbeke. Oh, you just want to move the report? Yeah. Ms. Morrison, did you have a question? No? Okay, just seconding. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. Item number 12, reports for information, BD 3720, Watershed Management Services activities report. Just looking for direction. Oh, Councillor Janice?
Move it.
Seconded by Councillor Desjardins. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. Okay. No emergency and no correspondence. Okay, so Nicole, I'll be asking for your direction. We are going to move into committee of the whole in just a moment. I do want to stress to board members, we will be moving it and for those who are watching on the live stream, and sorry I didn't welcome you in at the beginning of this meeting. Thank you for being with us this evening. We will be moving in camera, so the live stream will be suspended. We will come back, however, because we do have a Source Protection Authority meeting immediately following the board, the ERCA board meeting, which is also a public meeting, and the live stream, as I understand it, will resume. So for those that want to, go ahead, Mr. Burney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also have that report under new business.
Oh, absolutely. Item 14 for the updated agenda there. And the report, for those who are watching, that report is on Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act Budget Measures 2020 and proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. Mr. Burney will be offering a report on that as a part of the ERCA board agenda. So we are going into committee of the whole. We will the live stream will be suspended for those viewing. We'll conduct our business in camera, and we will be coming back and resuming the live stream. I hope that's clear. I unfortunately I'm not able to provide a timeline in terms of when we will be back, though. So having said that, I am looking for procedurally. Okay, so I'll be looking for a motion to move it, or sorry, before I do that, Nicole, do we end the live stream or should I do the motion first?
Motion first, please.
Motion first.
Okay, so I need a motion to move into the committee of the whole. Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Courtney. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you. So we will be suspending the live stream. Thank you.